Coming up on Oakdale Update, we'll chat with our police chief, Bill Sullivan. We'll learn about the Plant the Future event. Stay tuned. Oakdale Update is straight ahead. Hello, and welcome to Oakdale Update. I'm your host, Frank Orsello. This is the City of Oakdale's news and information program about your community. Bill Sullivan has been the police chief in Oakdale since 1988. He's here with me in our studio today to talk about a variety of topics about the police department. Chief Sullivan, thanks for joining us on Oakdale Update.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate it.
Nice to have you here.
It's good to be back.
Okay, let's start out. Tell us about yourself, a little bit about yourself.
As you indicated, I've been here since 1988. My family and I moved here from Iowa. It's been a fantastic run. Kids were raised here, went to school here. Wife works in the community as I do, obviously, and it became home for us.
Mm-hmm. What were your background? You were in the Army MPs? Were you Army
I was
MPs?
an Army MP, got into law enforcement when I got out of the Army. Ultimately was a chief in a small rural community in northwestern Iowa, and wanted to come to a metro area. The Oakdale job became available, and I was lucky enough to get that, and here we are.
It turned out just fine, didn't it?
Turned out perfect, yeah.
So, were you looking at retirement down the road here a little bit, or what?
Not even for one moment, Frank, no.
Did you really?
No.
Good for you.
I
You're gonna be here
really enjoy what I'm doing. The city's been great to work for, and I just don't have any interest in retiring.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Keeps you young, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Jeez. Okay, our goal today, Bill, is to talk about the structure of the police department, okay, the Oakdale Police Department. And first of all, I just want to know, is the way ours is lined up, is that pretty standard for most police departments?
It's going to be fairly traditional in that sense, yes.
Okay, so we've got three divisions. We've got the Patrol Division, the Criminal Investigation Division, and Administration Service.
Correct.
So let's start with the Patrol Division. Okay, you want to go down the list on that?
Sure. In the Patrol Division, typically they're the officers that the community's going to have contact with. The bulk of the department is assigned to that function. It includes the general response to calls for service, the uniformed patrol officers and patrol sergeants. Our school resource program is included in that. Any kind of tactical activities would be included in that. And so on a day-to-day basis, those are the officers that you're going to have the most contact with.
So let me ask you this. If a call comes in, they're the first responders,
right.
Is that correct?
That is correct,
Okay.
yes.
And then what would happen if it was a SWAT team, you needed a SWAT team? What would that fit in?
Well, what we do in Oakdale is we have tried to train all of our officers for those tactical kind of responses, as opposed to having a designated unit doing it. Our thinking on that is simply that when the call comes in, you don't always have the luxury of time to get it all organized. Sure. Whoever responds has to be able to take care of it.
Sure.
If we needed additional assistance beyond that, we could get assistance from Washington County or from St. Paul.
All right, so then moving on, you've got the General Patrol, or no, okay, I'm sorry, part-time officers. You have some part-time officers in there.
We did at one time, and we keep that option available to us in the event we're making a transition with somebody, because once in a while it helps them to get part-time licensing so we can get them started earlier. We haven't had to do that in a little bit, but that option is available to us.
In the CSO person
Yes.
where do they fit in here?
The community service officers fit into the patrol division as well, and they're actually really a very critical part of our organization because of all the stuff they do. It's all those behind the scene things that just magically get taken care of. Animal control, lots of vehicle maintenance issues, parking enforcement, that sort of thing. Our community service officers do a great job with that.
So now you also have the community affair officers. Now, what exactly is that?
Our community affairs officer is Michelle Stark, and what we do with Michelle is she's responsible for coordinating all of our community-based kind of activities. Crime-free multi-housing, neighborhood watch, that sort of thing. She is a resource for the patrol officers and the patrol sergeants, and a resource for the community simultaneously. So it's kind of the link between the two.
Does she put on seminars or come to the old people's homes or neighborhoods or that?
Oh, yes.
Is that,
yes.
Is that what it is?
Yes, Michelle does. And there are a number of officers in the department that have an interest in this kind of thing as well that help her out.
Would this be the school liaison officer too?
Well,
Is he in that?
in that particular case, that position's dedicated to being on site at the schools during the day. And so it's a kind of a different function that we share a contract with the school district over that one.
Is that a seasonal job? Because when school's not.
It is. What we do is during the summer months, that position comes back to the police department, and we'll work a patrol shift then.
Do people, they kind of volunteer for this for a particular reason? I mean, is it because it's inside all the time or whatever?
Well, you know, we have, their interest varies depending on the time of year and the people that are available at the time. Some officers are interested in doing that kind of thing because they like kids, like working with kids, that sort of thing. And others would have no interest in doing it at all. They'd rather be outside. So what we've tried to do is we've tried to keep those to about a 4-year rotation. Tom Higgins is our current school resource officer, does a great job. I think he's in his 3rd year now. And so at the end of 4 years, we'll rotate him out and bring somebody new in.
How effective is it having a policeman on board like that?
Well, that's an interesting question. What we do is we find that it's valuable for developing relationships with the students and with the staff. I think the presence of the officer makes people feel comfortable. But there is a trend starting nationally to remove the officers from the schools because the fear is that we're criminalizing bad behavior is what it boils down to. So, you know, in the old days, you get in trouble, you go to the principal, and it'd be taken care of in-house, and now it could end up being a disorderly conduct citation, that sort of thing. And so there's a kind of a debate about whether departments keep doing that or not, but we don't foresee any changes in the near future here. I think we'll probably be continuing to do it the same way.
So that's part of the school shootings too, I'm sure, right? And
well, it's, yeah, you know, the idea, I think that presence makes people feel more comfortable. You know, we want to make sure that people don't just assume because there's an officer there you'll never have trouble. But I think it does make people feel better about it. I think the advantage for the officer is the relationship stuff. You get to know who everybody is.
Sure. Okay, now, the next division is Criminal Investigation Division.
Right.
Tell us about that.
CID would be like the investigators, like you see on TV. Detectives are the ones that'll do more of the, if we have significant events, homicides, that sort of thing, if we have long-term events, things that require lots of time and commitment to investigate them, the investigators will actually take over those cases from the patrol officers. The patrol officers tend to be driven by call load. What's going on, how many calls for service, that sort of thing. If it gets to be too complex or too time-consuming, they'll hand it off to the people who then have the time and resources to take care of those things.
So these would be investigators,
Right.
that this is all they do, is that correct?
This is what they do. Yes.
Okay, you say murders, but now what about, what minimal would they do, as in burglaries or larceny?
Oh yeah, they'll do any kind of pattern crimes that we're having where you have a significant number of similar burglaries and thefts, that sort of thing. Criminal sexual conduct, they do all those investigations involving adults and children. Crimes of violence, they, for the most part, will handle all the follow-up on those. And so they keep themselves pretty busy. We also, one of our investigators is assigned to the DEA task force out of Minneapolis, and that's been really a valuable link for us as well.
So what does that mean? He goes to them for advice, or they come to him and
No, he's
help
actually
them out?
assigned to the unit there. And then when we have situations where we're able to use those kinds of resources, we'll refer those cases directly over to him. And then the people that are working with him at the DEA will assist him. So it's been a real benefit to the city of Oakdale also.
How many people are involved in the investigation end?
Well, we're going to have, there are going to be 5 investigators performing various functions, and they're supported also by some non-licensed personnel. We have a member of our department who takes care of all the property and evidence. We have other folks who will take care of records and, you know, transcription and that kind of thing. So the bulk of the department will be in patrol. Then, of course, criminal investigations will have a lesser number of people, but they're more focused on what they're doing.
Would this include embezzlement and this sort of thing?
Sure, yes.
Okay, and how is that going in our community, the embezzlement part?
You know what, we actually see more financial crimes now, but that's typical for just about everywhere. Much of that related to computers, obviously. And so we have some folks who are really well trained in that. We do handle those cases. We have other resources we can get to assist us if we need it. We also are probably going to see, over the years, we're going to see more issues involving the elderly, simply because there are more and more older folks. They tend to be very susceptible to financial scams and that sort of thing.
That's an interesting point. I personally have had calls with people wanting my credit card number or my cash number, card number. Are people supposed to call the police about that? A call like that?
Yes, I would.
How
Nobody's
can
going
you
to
track
call
it
you on
down,
the phone.
though? How can you track it down?
Well, there are a variety of techniques that can be used to try to do that, and you won't always be successful. The most important thing that I think for a person to do is simply to say, no. It's private information. We'd love to have them call and let us know about it. But if you're not comfortable doing that, that's okay, as long as you're telling people, no, I'm not giving you any information.
So that would take us back to the community affairs, where they would go out and try and tell people, don't just say no.
Right. In fact, I did it myself. I went out to Oak Meadows. They invited me out to make a presentation a couple weeks ago about some of those very issues. And we tend to have, older folks tend to be more trusting. They also tend to be less interested in contacting the police because they feel like they're bothering you. And you know, we've assured
polite,
people they're not. They're very polite. They're very. And I told the group at Oak Meadows, do not be so nice. You know, pick up the phone, call us, and let us help you out.
Absolutely. All right. In the criminal investigation, there is narcotics. Now, let's talk about narcotics.
Right.
The narcotics division, and what does that entail?
Well, we do. Where we will primarily handle our stuff through DEA, through the task force that I was telling you about. So we make those referrals. Lots of drug arrests in suburban communities tend to come from patrol, stopping vehicles, people that are searched, that sort of thing. We have been really, I think, very fortunate. There is you've obviously followed the trend with heroin and that sort of thing. We've had our experiences with it here, but for the most part, we've not seen anything that I think is out of the norm. But when we do have that kind of stuff come up, we'll use our DEA connection.
So probably, well, what you're finding mostly is just people with a lot of little weed in the car. And
You're going to find marijuana, cocaine, heroin more so now, methamphetamine. Where we've been fortunate is we're not seeing a huge crisis with it. You're not seeing overwhelming numbers.
Okay, all right. So, so then let's get into the Administration Service Division.
Right.
Okay, talk to us about that.
Administrative services will take care of all of the stuff that's related to records functions, general communications with the public. We used to do more radio communications, dispatching kind of things. But a number of years ago, we completely turned that over to Washington County, and we kind of got out of that business. We were at a point in time where we had to make a commitment, not only in personnel and training, but in equipment as well, the technology, and decided that it just wasn't worth the expense. It was easier to do it through the county. And so administrative services will take care of all those kinds of functions. And they're really just a critical component because they're the ones having contact with the public every day. Folks coming for reports with lots of questions about things, trying to gather information. They do a magnificent job for us. All that stuff comes in, and somebody's got to organize it and keep track of it. And that's
So where does Karen fit into this?
Karen Haynes?
Yes.
Karen Haynes is our crime analyst, and what Karen actually reports directly to me. And the reason that we do that is because it kind of freed Karen from that chain of command about who you're supposed to be answering to or not answering to. So here's what the analyst does, is the analyst gathers all of the information that comes into the department, looks at it and decides what patterns or trends are occurring and how our resources should be used. And sometimes it's possible to send out reports that some people could be uncomfortable with. You know, there may be a problem on a particular shift or that sort of thing going on. And we don't want people to feel like they're being accused of not doing their job.
Sure.
What we want Karen to be free to say, here's what I see from a data standpoint. This is what we need to take care of, and it's easier for her to do that out of my office.
So it just happens to be a cop on duty at a high crime rate, right? And he could conceivably think that he's part of the problem.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah, and some, you know, our patrol sergeants take great pride in their shifts.
Sure.
They work real hard at trying to keep things under control, and sometimes, you know, you can react negatively to when you don't get good news. So,
you talked about being involved with Washington County. They have got to be pretty important part of the whole police force, isn't it? Really, as a general rule.
Yeah, Washington County, we rely on Washington County for a couple of different things. One of them is all of our communication stuff. So, and by the way, we want to make sure everybody's dialing 911 when they need something. We don't use administrative numbers anymore. So it all goes through the county and is tracked that way and organized. We will also use the county for all of our jailing services. And at this point in time, Washington County does not charge us for that, which is great. Other counties do sometimes. So yeah, we do rely on them for a couple of significant services.
Do you have a holding cell in Oakdale?
We do have a holding cell that actually has been converted into storage.
Oh, is that right?
And the reason is when the department was first built, it was a useful function. Over the years, it's become so complex, the things that you have to do to try to hold someone in it, that it's easier to make that Sheriff Hutton's problem. So we put them in a car and take them to Stillwater.
I see. Okay, now where does the prosecuting part of this come into play?
The prosecutor is a separate office. Now what we do is the prosecutor's physical office is located in the police department.
Oh, it is.
And so we've done that because of access to records and for them, accessing our records, the relationships, all that other sort of thing. But it is an independent office in the sense that the police department does not tell the city prosecutor what to do. The prosecutor makes independent decisions. We simply work together.
Let's do an example here. So you arrest somebody. Now you're going to haul them out to Washington County Jail.
Right.
And then what? Your people come back to the city of Oakdale and do the process,
They'll come
paperwork?
back. Yep, they'll do the paperwork. Sometimes there's going to be additional paperwork that needs to be done depending on what the offense is. And then the appropriate prosecutor will take it. Real serious crimes are taken by the county attorney's office, by Pete Orpet's office. And the less serious offenses are taken by the city attorney's office, Cam McClellan. And so they'll help us prepare any other documents that need to be done to formally charge somebody.
So is this prosecutor in the building all the time?
Yes.
8 hours a day?
Yes, he's in court more than he's in the building.
Oh, sure.
Because he's handling all those things. But yep, always.
Is he paid by the city of Oakdale?
Paid by the city of Oakdale, yes.
Oh, fabulous.
Yep.
Wonderful. Well, that is very insightful. I learned a lot today.
Yeah.
But I just want to ask you now, getting back to when you first started here back in '88, what trends do you see coming up, and what was it like back when you were first started? Understanding, of course, there was a lot of agriculture out here at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And it just grew, and we're in first ring city, so.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here are a couple of things that I would say are most noticeable. Obviously, we have more commercial base now, so you have more of those kinds of issues, shoplifting, that sort of thing, than we probably used to. The community is far more diversified demographically. It was, when I first started here, was predominantly white. And the school district itself is rapidly approaching 50% minority now. And the community reflects that as well. And so there have been there have been some learning curves for us as well, some other challenges related to that sometimes, some opportunities for us to learn from other cultures as well. Those have been big changes. We're getting a pretty large population of elderly folks, and we'll see more of the financial crimes that you've talked about. But for us, it really is trying to figure out how do we provide the best possible public safety services and not consume all of the resources.
Sure.
Because between police and fire, you can take up huge amounts of the tax money.
Okay. Now, I just got one last question here.
Sure.
Are you tied up, how close are you to the police or fire department? I mean, what is your role there with the EMTs and that kind of thing?
We're clearly separate departments here. Some places are more merged. We're clearly separate departments, but have a very close working relationship. Chief Anderson and his folks do a terrific job, and they help us wherever they can, and we try to do the same for them.
Okay, sounds good. And I want to get one more thing, and you said be sure to call 911 if you want to individually call somebody. And I learned it myself. I tried to call you, and I got rebuked because I didn't dial 911, but I'm not used to that.
It is very, you know what, for years and years we told people don't call 911 unless it's an emergency. Now we want you to call for everything.
I know.
So get online. Sometimes you can get online and find the direct dial numbers for offices.
Yes.
So like if you were trying to call me.
Yes.
And I finally got you to understand.
Well, I'm slow.
That is.
Bill, I want to thank you for joining us
you.
today, because it was very learned experience, and
I
appreciate your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
It's almost time for a short break, but first, here's our trivia question. The Ramsey, Washington Metro Watershed District is holding the annual Waterfest 2014 on Saturday, May 3rd, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Phelan Lake Park. Our trivia question is, how many years has Waterfest been held? Is it 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years? We'll have the answer later in the show. It's time for a short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of Oakdale Update in just a minute. Welcome back to Oakdale Update. With me now to tell us about our upcoming Plant the Future event is our City Forester, Chris Larson. Chris, thanks for joining us on Oakdale Update.
Thanks for having me here, Frank.
Okay, just give me a little bit about your title. What exactly do you do for Oakdale?
Well, I'm the Environmental Services Superintendent in the City Forester, and basically that means I take care of the maintenance of the city's surface water systems and their forestry and horticulture.
Okay, and you take care of like the nature center and that sort of thing, all the plants and things that go in there, is that correct?
We do an extensive amount of work up in the Oakdale Nature Preserve.
Okay. All right, so you are going to create a forest garden. What exactly is that?
Well, forest garden is, it has to be distinguished from forest farming. Forest farming is where people grow plants like ginseng and stuff like that amongst a forest. Forest gardening is actually planting like the forest, so you're taking woodland-like patterns and pairing plants together so that they work together. Instead of in competition, they work in cooperation, and they're mutually beneficial to each other.
Is this an idea you came up with, or where did this come up from?
I wish I came up with the idea, but it's actually, forest gardening has been done for centuries. It's pretty popular in China and the tropics, highly popular. There are a number of examples in temperate climates, and using temperate climate examples, and there's a good amount of literature now with demonstration sites where they're starting to pop up, especially in universities in temperate climates, where you can actually take some of these systems and they're highly productive because they're taking the nutrient requirements of plants and they're pairing them with plants that actually provide those requirements.
Mm-hmm. You say China is really big on this?
Yeah, it's actually a legacy type thing. They're passed down from generation to generation. It's typically a lot of the richer families have these gardens that they pass down, and the trees that are in them are typically like high-valued timber species trees.
That's interesting. Okay, in your brochures there it said a definition, foresting gardens are not necessarily gardening in the forest, it's gardening like the forest. Could you explain that to us?
Yeah, like it's kind of back to the forest farming. Like forest farming will harvest like mushroom logs, like shiitake mushrooms is popular in forest farming. Ginseng's popular in forest farming, and that's working within an existing forest. Where forest gardening is a lot of times taking like an open area and kind of inserting an advanced succession woodland-like species. So you're planting everything to create a mid-succession forest where it has more light than like forest farming would have a lot more shaded, a dense overstory, where in a woodland you're going to have 40 to 50% of the canopy is wide open, so you get a lot of light into these systems, and that's what makes them so productive.
In this project, are you going to plant trees too, plants and trees? And
that's correct. The project actually strives to have a rich ecology, and in order to do that, you have to have multiple different layers. So there will be overstory trees, understory trees, and then there'll be a shrub layer, and then several herb layers and a ground layer. So there's and even a vine layer. So you have all these different layers of vegetation, so they can take. And it's relatively, they're spaced so that you get as much light as possible, and you take advantage of all these different layers, so you have multiple different habitats for different insects, wildlife, and by doing that, that's where we're creating more than just the combination of plants. The relationships between them are what actually it creates. It's more than the sum of its parts, I guess.
Sure. And where are you going to put this in Oakdale? You've got one planted, or in the works, so where exactly is it going to go?
Right in the heart of Oakdale Nature Preserve. There's a nice site that I came across in there. It's right by one of our buckthorn removal event sites. In 2009, we had removed buckthorn from an area on this southern peninsula in Oakdale Park. And going back to do follow-up management there, and kind of noticed that it was set up perfectly for a forest garden. And
Where exactly is it? Tell us.
Right in the heart of Oakdale Park, it's just west of the Discovery Center,
Okay.
almost halfway through the park, and on the south side of Mud Lake. And it used to be a house in there, and back in the late 80s, that house was, they used it as, they burned it down in a fire training exercise.
Okay. Now, when are you going to start this project?
The project will probably start doing some prep sometime this week, in the next couple weeks, and the actual planting date will be May 3rd, Saturday, May 3rd, so it's coming up pretty quick here.
Okay, and is this a city project, or is this volunteers, or the tree board, or who's involved?
This is the Oakdale Tree Board coordinating this, and we'll be using volunteers. We get a lot of student volunteers, and that's part of the educational component.
Sure.
We want to get some of the kids their hands in the soil and work in some of these plants and seeing the ecology that develops.
Okay, do you have volunteers lined up, or do you need some, or what?
We're always looking for volunteers. The more the merrier in an event like this.
Okay.
And we want to expose a lot of people to what Oakdale Park has to offer, and kind of show them the unique thing about this planting too is it uses a lot of the native plants. And
All right, if anybody wants to volunteer, you want to give us your number so they can contact you?
yeah, I would love if they contacted me.
Or groups, right? Boy Scouts or whatever?
Yep, groups, churches, schools, any type of organization, individuals. If they want to get a hold of me, they can reach me at 651-501-5302, and or they could reach me via email at chris.larson@ci.oakdale.mn.us.
Okay, we'll have that up on the screen. Chris, thanks for joining us today. We're out of time.
Thanks for having me, Frank.
And good luck to you on their project.
Thanks.
Okay, we're just about out of time, but first let's answer a trivia question. We asked you, how many years has Waterfest been held? The correct answer is 15 years. For 15 years, the Watershed District has held a Waterfest event to promote clean water and provide a hands-on learning opportunity about water quality as it relates to our watershed. There are numerous activities and events scheduled for this year, including canoe and boat rides, fishing, sailing, displays, and experts to answer your questions. For more information, call 651-647-6816 or visit the website listed on the screen. That's all we have time for. For everyone at the City of Oakdale, thanks for watching.